What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome back to my channel. Again, continuing with 2021 schedule preview and predictions. Today is up with the Kentucky Wildcats, the most underrated team coming into next season. How do I think they're going to do next year? Well, their schedule sets up really nice. Before we look at that, we're going to look at some talent. And hey, if you guys are new around here, please leave a like. Also subscribe. Of course, if you are brand new, the channel has just grown recently at a really fast pace, faster than I ever could have expected. I think Studio showed me that in the past month, we've almost gained 100 subscribers, which is insane. So thank you guys so much. Continue to leave comments down below. Tell me your thoughts on the teams that I do videos on. And then starting this weekend, we're going to be uploading every single day. Yes, we're going to get into top 10 players and conference power rankings as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about Kentucky in 2021. So a team this year that really underrated. And after what they did in 2018, it seemed like a blip. It seemed like that was it. That's all Kentucky was going to do. That at least, that's as good as Kentucky's going to get. Well, this year there are some interesting things that are going to be happening at Kentucky. Hey, they might start throwing the football. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But we got to look at what this team is losing to understand why they're underrated. So Terry Wilson has gone along with Akeem Hayes, Allen Daly. At wide receiver position. Some okay losses there, but Terry Wilson, the big loss there at quarterback. And, well, not necessarily a quarterback because Kentucky didn't throw the ball all that much, but still a loss. I mean, Terry Wilson was a really good player. When he threw the ball was a good dual threat quarterback, not elite by any means, but still losing the starter will hurt. And losses on the defense as well. Quinton Bohanna, Phil Hoskins off the defensive line. But arguably the biggest loss on this team is linebacker Jamin Davis, an NFL draft pick, believe went in the first or second round. He is a phenomenal player, great linebacker, should perform really, really well in the NFL. And then losing off the defensive back group, you got MJ Devonshire, Brandon Eccles, and then Kelvin Joseph. In my opinion, Kelvin Joseph is the biggest loss off of the defensive backing group. But Kentucky losing, some, not a super huge amount, but some playmakers definitely. Terry Wilson, Jamin Davis are gone. So you might be thinking, well, how can this team be underrated? This team is losing some talent that was going to make them good this year. Well, how are they underrated? It's not about what you lost. It's about what you have. And it is about what you have at Kentucky because, in my opinion, this is the biggest winner of the transfer portal this year. In my opinion, just them with how underrated they're going to be this year. I think this is the biggest win. I think this team is the biggest winner of the transfer portal. You could throw in others. You could throw in Nebraska, maybe Alabama, other teams like that. But I think just because of how underrated the talent they're getting is, this is the biggest win. They got a quarterback, Will Levis, over from Penn State. Sean Clifford is going to be that starter over at Penn State. And Will Levis said, hey, I prefer not to be here right now. So Will Levis maybe could be the starter at Kentucky. I'm not too sure of that right now. Could find his way into a starting role. And I think will at least some point during the season, if not, could end up being the starter right away. Chris Rodriguez is there at running back, of course, coming back. And I think he is going to be disgusting. He is a phenomenal running back. The SEC has a lot of those. Jerrion Ealy's a good one. You got Brian Robinson at Alabama, Tank Bigsby at Auburn. There are a lot of good running backs in the SEC. Chris Rodriguez might be the best one out of that group. I mean, there may be besides Isaiah Spiller, or Zamir White as well. But Chris Rodriguez, I think he's disgusting. Could have an excellent year for Kentucky. And then another transfer. A big win as Kentucky should start passing the football this year. You're going to want a guy that can go up and catch passes. Josh Ali is coming back, and yes, he is one of those guys, but getting a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson is huge. And especially if Kentucky's going to keep someone of the same system, Wan'Dale Robinson is a guy that can run the football as well. And that's kind of the role he took on at Nebraska a little bit later on in his career, especially last year if you go back and watch tape. Keaton Upshaw coming back at tight end, and then on the defense, some very underrated players. I mean, you got guys overlooking everyone on this defense. Phil Hoskins, Joshua Paschal. Again, sorry if I say names wrong. Pascal. However you say that last name. Jordan Wright, Jamar Watson, and Yusuf Corker. Defensive back group going to be led by Yusuf Corker. And what could be a pretty solid defense this year. But the main reason that Kentucky is underrated, yes, you have all of this talent on this team. What is there not to love? Well, when you look, their schedule sets up really nicely. And they have some big opportunities to pull off a pretty substantial win. You have a home game against Florida, home game against LSU. We'll talk about those here in a little bit. But hey, they were 5-6 last year, 4-6 in the SEC, as they were 4th in the SEC East, and ended up winning the Gator Bowl, I believe, against NC State. Hey, I'm going to talk about some games more than others. You guys know how this works. If it gets highlighted in green, it's a win. If it gets highlighted in red, it's a loss. Without further ado, let's talk about Kentucky in 2021. And they're starting off with ULM, University of Louisiana Monroe. And again, we've talked about this team a lot in the past week. Talked about it with Coastal Carolina, talked about it with Liberty, and now here talking about it with Kentucky. Didn't win a game last year, and I don't see that really changing much. Kentucky should be able to easily run over ULM. And then a home game against Missouri. And I think Kentucky is going to struggle with Missouri here. I've talked about Missouri as a team that I'm not super high on. I don't see a lot of top 25 potential in Missouri. I just don't see the hype that Missouri is getting this year. But I think it's going to be hard for Kentucky to find their new identity right away. I think it's going to be hard for Kentucky to come out of the gate and win these games against these tough opponents. Hey, Missouri, they're going to be a solid team this year. Don't get me wrong. This is going to be a solid team. I could see this game going either way, but right now I give the slight edge to the Missouri Tigers. And I think Kentucky is going to be trying to establish the passing game. It's a new thing. Kentucky hasn't done it in quite a bit, couple years at least. The defense should, it's going to be hard to find their rhythm. They should start out 1-0, but I just don't know if they can get past Missouri as early as week 2. And a home game against Chattanooga, should pretty easily be able to win this one. I think Chattanooga, really good FCS team, but in terms of FBS, they should get steamrolled here. South Carolina. And this was a tricky one as well because it's early in the season. Again, Kentucky still might be trying to establish that identity a little bit, but South Carolina is not that great either. Now, look, you have South Carolina, some pretty good linebackers at South Carolina, pretty good players in the front seven, and a good running back in Kevin Harris. But you lose your starting quarterback to transfer. You lose some other guys around there as well. I'm not buying anything that South Carolina is putting down this year. South Carolina, an interesting team this year. Yes, we'll have to see how they do. I just don't feel like they're going to fare too well in this game. And I think if Chris Rodriguez can get it going and really stick it to that defensive front seven, this pass game is going to open up, and it's going to be a completely different Kentucky team that we've seen in years past. These next 2 games is where it gets interesting, and it's where I got to start explaining some stuff. At home against Florida. This is going to be a hard game for Kentucky to win, as is their next game, but I'll talk about that next game in a little bit. In my opinion, out of these 2, Florida is the harder game than LSU. I'm just a little more confident in what Florida has right now. I'm more confident in the talent that they have. Now, that defense for Florida, not the best. Although I expect some improvement this year, not the best defense. I predict that Florida's defense is going to get just a little bit better this year. And I think it's going to be the difference in this game. Look, Kentucky can have a really good offense, especially if this throwing attack gets going. But I do have Florida winning this game. And especially when you look at the playmakers Florida has on defense, Brenton Cox, Ventrell Miller, Khair Elam, just some really good playmakers on the defensive end. I think they're going to be able to slow Kentucky down, and Florida is going to get the win here. I could see this game being a lot closer than people think, though. All right, this is where I got some explaining to do. Home game against LSU. I'm going to say right now, if you watch my LSU video, my prediction for them is 9-3, and that is not changing. But I do have to say that I did not do my fair amount of research on LSU, and I talked about some players in light that, they shouldn't have been talked about. It was a whole thing. The LSU video, not my best content. So for one, I apologize for that. But secondly, I'm not changing my opinion on this game, y'all. Okay. I am not high on LSU this year. I don't think they're going to do too well. And I don't care who starts at quarterback, whether that be Finley, Johnson, Brennan. It doesn't matter. I just don't feel like LSU is going to do great this year. Their best wide receiver is going to be Keyshawn Boot. And with Davis Price coming back at running back, they should be a much better team than they were last year. I'm not confident in LSU this year. And I think, I think Kentucky is going to surprise some people. I think Kentucky is going to come out and pull a huge win this year. And I think that's going to be against LSU. I think a lot of people are way too high on LSU. And I've seen comments on that video where they've had them going 12-0 or 11-1. I'm just not that confident in LSU this year. And I know the talent that Kentucky has. They get them at home. I think it's going to be a close game, but I do think Kentucky squeaks out this win. So a huge upset win here for Kentucky, what I'm predicting for this next season. A road game against the Georgia Bulldogs will prove to be their hardest test of the season. And there's no easy way to say this. They're not winning this game. Georgia's going to be too good this year. Georgia's got the best group of wide receivers they've ever had, even with the loss to George Pickens. Also picking up the tight end, Arik Gilbert from before mentioned LSU. Georgia's going to be a really good team this year. I just don't see Kentucky slowing Georgia down, especially with it being on the road. It's in Athens. I just don't see Kentucky keeping this one particularly close. And then they get a bye week before a road game against Mississippi State. Now, the pick I'm going to make here might surprise some people with the way I've talked about Mississippi State in the past. Mississippi State is a good, Mississippi State has Mike Leach, a head coach. They like the air raid attack, but I called Mississippi State my most overrated team coming into this year. And since that video, Mississippi State has gotten a little bit better in my eyes. There are some things that I kind of overlooked about Mississippi State, but this rushing attack is going to be, this passing attack from Mississippi State, if they can get it going, should be really good. And we saw what KJ Costello could do with them last year. Don't believe KJ Costello is back, though. They're also losing Kylan Hill, which, again, never really used that much just because of the air raid attack. But a lot of things happened at Mississippi State last year, and you saw the way they handled Tulsa in the bowl game. It's just playing in the SEC. Do I still think Mississippi State is overrated? Yes, absolutely. I think they could be vying for one of the worst teams in the SEC. But I'm going to give them the win here. It's a road game for Kentucky. This passing attack is going to be insane for Mississippi State, as it usually is under a Mike Leach offense. Again, give Mike Leach some time. He'll figure stuff out in Mississippi State, especially on the defensive end. And I think this is going to be an offensive shootout. I think it's going to be a showdown offensively, and I think Mississippi State wins that showdown. So Kentucky, 4-4 up to this point, but the rest of their games are more than winnable. We'll go through them real quick. Tennessee, don't quite know what to expect from Tennessee this year. I mean, just you don't. With people transferring out, Josh Heupel coming in, it's in my mind just not a lot to like at Tennessee. I have Kentucky winning this game. Road game against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt might be the worst team in the SEC. One of the worst teams in the Power 5. Don't care that it's a road game. Kentucky should easily get this win. A home game against New Mexico State. They schedule a lot of SEC folks, don't they? But now Kentucky should be able to win that one as well. And then a road game against Louisville. So Louisville is a team this year that I'm not high on at all either. Losing guys at wide receiver. Believe Malik Cunningham is coming back, but you lose Javion Hawkins, you lose Tutu Atwell, and playmakers on defense as well, especially with now a coach on the hot seat after Louisville just couldn't figure it out last year after they should be really good. I mean, there was no excuse to with the record they had, with the talent they had last year. Louisville was a solid team in 2019, and 2020 it all seemed to fall apart. Do they get back there this year? I mean, possibly. I just don't see it. I like the Kentucky Wildcats to win this game, beat the Louisville Cardinal. And with that, you see 4 games highlighted in red and 1 surprise game highlighted in green. I will add, I have Kentucky going 8-4. You're going to yell at me about the LSU game like you did my LSU video. That's fine. Hey, I'm not high on LSU this year. I don't see the upside to LSU this year. I could be wrong about that. Who knows? Hey, that's what these predictions are for, right? But I am high on Kentucky, and Kentucky's schedule sets up really nice. The home game against Missouri that I haven't listened to, I just think that's an identity establishing thing. Trying to pass the football might not work out too well. And Missouri's still a solid team. They got a good defense. I think Kentucky's going to have a hard time there. And that offensive showdown against Mississippi State, I just think State will end up coming out on top. And it also just evens out the record because I do have them beating LSU, and I think they're going to win either against Florida or against LSU. I do think they're going to win one of those two games and pull off some sort of upset this year. And with that, that is my schedule preview and prediction for the Kentucky Wildcats. Oh, ceiling is 10-2. I think the absolute ceiling is 10-2 with the talent that is on this team. If they play like I think they can play, this can be a really good team. But if not, hey, 6-6 is still a viable option. Additional losses I would add onto that would be LSU, and I would probably guess Louisville or South Carolina. But 6-6 is my absolute floor for Kentucky. I have them going 8-4. And that's going to do it for my preview prediction for the Kentucky Wildcats. Hey, if you guys enjoyed, please leave a like. Also consider subscribing if you're brand new to the channel or you just enjoy my content. You can leave a comment down below. Keep it PG down there, please. You can also share the video as well. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the NC State Wolfpack, team that just played this Kentucky team in the last game of the 2020 season. Can NC State continue their momentum from last year? You're going to find out tomorrow. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. See all you guys tomorrow when we talk about NC State. Goodbye.